Hi, I'm Josh Rushing, filling in for Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, do governments have the right to filter out the content that we see online? Well, in the UK, they're planning to do just that with your porn. All right, our digital producer, Malika Blau, is here looking out for your live feedback. I've been getting a lot of feedback on my personal social media on this one.
I'm sure you have.
Yeah, how's your community?
Well, we wanted to get a sense of how our community defines porn, what is porn. So we asked, and James Dahl on Twitter answered. He says, there's no definition for pornography other than the classic, I know it when I see it. Now, of course, James is referencing the 1964 Supreme Court case here in the US. But, of course, what's considered porn here in the US may not be the same for the UK. So we want to hear from you. We'll talk about that during today's show. Tweet us your thoughts with hashtag AJStream.
Thank you for that Wikipedia moment there. I think it's a phrase everyone knows but doesn't know where it came from. Or
exactly.
Couldn't know it to 64. I like that. All right, joining us on set is Peter Nowak. He's author of the book, Sex, Bombs, and Burgers, How War, Porn, and Fast Food Created Technology as We Know It. Welcome to the stream, Peter.
Thanks for having me.
All right, now this show is driven by your ideas and participation. So look, if you have a pitch for a show, post it on facebook.com/AJStream. It could wind up on air. Now here's some of the avatars of those of you tweeting at us. Is the war on internet pornography in the UK censorship? Prime Minister David Cameron recently proposed a set of online filters that people will soon have to opt out of in order to watch certain kinds of porn.
I want to talk about the internet, the impact it's having on the innocence of our children, how online pornography is corroding childhood, and how, in the darkest corners of the internet, there are things going on that are a direct danger to our children and that must be stamped out.
Proponents claim this is a necessary measure that will attack child pornography, depictions of rape, and violence against women. Critics, however, see this as a form of censorship and believe that the filters may also prevent children from accessing sexual health information. So, is the government's place to set these restrictions, or is this an impediment to internet freedom? Joining us to discuss this via Skype is Fiona Elvine. She is the operations coordinator at Rape Crisis South London, the city's largest and oldest rape crisis center. She was one of the lead players that campaigned for a ban on online rape pornography. And in our Google Plus hangout is Zoe Stavry. She's a feminist blogger and a writer who is very critical of Cameron's proposal. Also with us is Lee Porter, an internet architect and safer media advocate. Welcome to the stream, everyone.
Thanks,
Peter,
Josh.
thank you. What is porn? And imagine for our audience, this show is in, I think, nearly 300 million homes in 100 different countries. So what is porn in the UK for today's discussion, in the US for where we sit, Canada where you come from, and our audience in South Africa, India, Doha, and so on?
That's an excellent question, and I think the only real answer is porn is in the eye of the beholder. What is pornographic to you may not be pornographic to me, nor could it be pornographic to somebody in another country. So I think that's really the fundamental human rights or free speech issue here in the UK is inevitably people are going to get caught, or websites are going to get caught, content is going to get caught in that dragnet that is completely doesn't qualify as porn, or that doesn't qualify under most definitions as porn, but it qualifies as somebody's definition, somebody who's basically in charge, who holds the keys to the gate. So I think that's one of the big issues with this filter.
Lee, you're in London and you're a techie. Explain to us how these filters would work.
Well, essentially, there's two ways you can filter traffic on the internet. One way is that you can look at all the traffic and work out what it is, where it's going to, where it came from, and then you can decide whether or not it is classified as going to a pornographic website or a news website like Al Jazeera. The other way is you can tap into the time when your computer looks up the address on the internet of a website. And at that stage, you can look at the website then, and there'll be a list somewhere that some organization maintains, and you can check against that list and say, is that list a blacklist of a website that might be pornographic or have adult content, or is it allowed through? So those are the two main ways. There's look at all the traffic, or just look at the way your computer gets the addresses on the internet.
So Lee, though, you're in the UK, and everyone knows that in the UK about page 3 girls have an image that's, I think, safe enough to air here on my laptop. Would this be considered porn to you in the UK?
Yes and no. So it's pornographic. It's a depiction of topless ladies, but I wouldn't say it's erotic porn. It isn't the kind of pornographic imagery you find on a website designed for gentlemen to go to enjoy themselves, for example. So I wouldn't say it's a kind of pornographic image that you'd want to filter out. No, certainly not.
All right, so Lee brings up it's not the kind of picture that you'd find gentlemen going to enjoy themselves, I think was his phrase. I'm trying to do the show without puns, and I'm trying to do it without giggling, Malika, and you're not helping.
I'm already seeing the puns online, but there's also some serious discussion here. Fiona Curious says, I grew up at a time when porn was only on VHS tape. Difficult to get. Now it's everywhere, but kids are not better for it. So Fiona, why now? And is it because now you don't have to go to VHS, it's on the internet, but why now in the UK?
Oh, sorry. Why now it's happened in the UK? It's actually, I don't know how much your viewers in international context will know about two recent convictions, very high-profile convictions for sexually violent men that happened in the UK. Mark Bridger and Stuart Hazel were convicted for the sexually motivated murder of two little girls, separate men working separately, both of which the high levels of images of child rape were found on their computers, and images of simulated rape and real rape. So as part of their deliberate pre-offence preparation, these men had accessed very violent pornography and very violent images of child abuse. And so it sparked a very big conversation in England that I think frankly it's needed to be had, and I'm really glad that we're having this space to actually outwardly have this conversation about pornography, because the problem with pornography is that it's so often hidden and secret and silent, and people don't talk about their consumption. So the thing that has been absent from a lot of this discussion so far is the consumers themselves. You know, I'd like to hear from consumers of pornography what they think the particular benefits are, and what, if any, harms they've actually identified in their own use.
Well, Fiona, as awful as those two cases are, do you know if there is actual data that shows a connection between pornography and society in terms of rape and murder?
Yeah, there's lots of research that's been done. People get very, very confused. People think that we're trying to find a causal link. We're never going to find a causal link, because to find a causal link is to completely undo any idea of responsibility for their crime for the perpetrators. So I would never want to suggest that there's a causal link between viewing rape pornography and then going out and raping. That's always, the responsibility lies solely with the perpetrator, who's making a choice to do that in every instance. What we do know is that there is evidence that links the viewing of violent pornography with attitudes that would support rape, so attitudes that support rape myths, pro-rape attitudes, as they're kind of called. And we know, I think Zoe mentioned in the pre-show about rape culture. So what we know is that in the UK at the moment we have a culture that is very supportive of rape, that creates the idea that men want to rape, that men are inherently sexually violent, and creates a lot of fear for women and a lot of restrictions to our freedom based on the fear of the very real probability of being raped. And so what rape pornography does is it does really play into this idea that rape isn't that bad. Some of the content that we watched showed positive outcome rape scenarios where the victim at the end of the rape, there was a positive outcome for her. The danger is that that sends a very strong message to men who are thinking about raping. So I'm not saying that men watching it that have no idea, no thought, no desire to go and hurt a woman like that. I'm not saying that watching this material makes them go and do it, but we do know that men who already have that desire will actively seek out this material in order to legitimize and to strategize their crimes.
But Fiona, I think what I'm trying to get at is take India, where I believe porn is illegal, internet porn is blocked there. There are still graphic and horrible rapes, as we've learned about this year, that still happen in India. Do you have a society that perhaps has less rapes than another society that allows internet porn? Is there some kind of evidence for this?
It's too simplistic. Trying to make links between pornography and sexual violence is too simplistic. We're operating in a very complex. There's a very complex world that is creating a conducive context to violence against women. So there is pornography. There's also things like rape jokes. Also, like very recently, I don't know how much you've heard about it, but on Twitter, the huge furor and again the kind of publicity that's been given to the amount of attacks and hostile misogynistic abuse that's directed against female bloggers such as Zoe, who's on your program today. All of this we see as creating a conducive context. Pornography is part of that context. It is not in itself. We're never going to find a directly causal link. That's too simplistic, and it's frankly not something that I think is very useful for us to look for.
So, Zoe, if you're against the filters, does that mean you're part of the pro-rape culture?
Oh, absolutely not. So, well, first things first, the proposals that David Cameron's put forward is kind of conflating three things. It's conflating actual sort of images of child rape and actual rape, and it's conflating this with consensual pornography depicting rape, which is simulated, and there is consent there, and we do need to sort of acknowledge that the performers there are consenting, and so that is a different thing. And finally, on top of all of this, it throws in internet filtering. Now, this internet filtering here is again, it's not just for pornography. The internet filtering will also cover various sorts of political websites. It includes a proposal to filter esoteric materials, whatever that is. And I'm all for internet freedom. Now, while they're sort of dressing this up as you will still be able to access this, you just need to opt out of the automatic filtering by your internet service provider. I can't really see a lot of people doing this. I can see a lot of people having their internet blocked because you walk in, you call up your internet service provider, say, can I have the content filters off? Well, everyone's just going to assume you're a perv and you want to go look up some porn. And obviously there is a sort of stigma attached to enjoying sex, a stigma attached to wanting to watch porn, sort of quite sex negativity going around. And porn, wow, a lot of it is absolutely terrible, horrible stuff. There is good stuff out there. There is good ethical pornography being made. And I feel like this is the sort of thing we should be supporting. We should
let me jump in
of,
and ask a question about
sure.
the effectiveness of these filters to Peter. Like I go on YouTube, right, and type in internet filters. And up comes, and I think, Peter, you can probably see it on the screen over here, how to bypass internet filters, how to bypass school internet filters, how to bypass any filter without a proxy, how to bypass internet filters without a proxy, how to bypass any school web filter.
That'll also be filtered.
The two things it'll tell you is how many videos are on here about how to bypass it. It must not be that difficult. And then two, I'm seeing school come up in a lot of these. So it's something that it seems perhaps younger generations might be more adept at getting around these types of filters than adults.
Yeah, and that's definitely the case. When Australia was trying to do this, they've been trying to do it for a couple of years now, and any filter that they've come up with has basically been, holes have been poked in it very quickly. I think the expectation is that if the UK does go ahead with this, the same is going to happen very, very soon. The reality is that nobody has successfully had an internet filter. No democratic country has had a successful internet filter, because then you have to get really draconian. So China, for example, China can detect things like virtual private networks, which are basically encrypted connections, encrypted tunnels that go outside the country and basically mask what your traffic is doing. China has been detecting those, and if it detects them, then it drops your internet connection. Well, that's great. We could try doing that in a country like the UK or the US or Canada. But if we do that, then say goodbye to all those people who are working from home, who are telecommuting, and people who are working for banks that need extra encryption on there. So it's not going to happen in those kinds of countries. So really, as you demonstrated there with Google, the other option is that you start to ban Google searches on how to access circumvention of internet filters. And then basically the question becomes, where do you stop? Where do you draw the line?
Mm-hmm. And it seems like a lot of our conversation thus far has been about men and the impact of porn on men and whether men become a threat. But I have a stat pulled up on my computer here, and this is from Gizmodo. 1 out of 3 porn viewers are women, Malika.
Definitely are, but on the men comment, we actually have a video comment that I want to play. Lee, I want you to have a listen to this.
The Independent on Sunday found that 99.9% of men in this country have or do look at pornography. We need to just leave it alone, stop being so British about it, and just accept that everyone enjoys sex and let it be what it is. Thanks, David Cameron. Leave us alone.
So Lee, we're seeing both sides of the debate because we have that video comment, but then this Facebook comment from Maggie who says, I'm usually all over this censorship business, but for once I have to say yes to it. So sick of how unhealthy our society has become from this addiction to pornography. Parents can't supervise their kids 24 hours a day. And of course, Lee, you have kids. Whose job is it to supervise them? Is the government, by stepping in, becoming a nanny state?
It's absolutely a parent's job to supervise children, and I would never have my children have a computer on their own in a room somewhere in our house. It should always be in a public area where they can be watched and they can be supervised correctly. What I find parents are lacking is the knowledge and especially the tools to help them when the children have other devices like phones, tablets, and if they do have computers in their room, which is a decision a parent makes, if you have these things, then parents lack the tools to put filtering on the devices to do it effectively, to stop them going to websites and activity on the internet that their parents wouldn't want them to do. So what I think this proposal does is it gives parents the power to control again what goes into their homes. They used to have that in that you'd have magazines on the top shelves, you'd have to subscribe to pornographic television channels. With the internet, that power that parents had has been lost.
Lee, isn't that something the free market could take care of? Can't you buy something for your computer that could block kids from getting porn? I mean, why does that have to come from the government?
Yeah, you can certainly buy things to do it. There are lots of programs you can buy to do it, but they don't always cover devices like iPads or Android devices or telephones. And if your house has lots of devices, which our house does, you have to buy a separate copy for each one. That can be very expensive. And also, some of them are quite difficult to control. You have to set them up separately on each PC, each device. It's a bit of a mess, and a lot of parents just haven't got the skills to do this. So if there could be a universally provided service that all ISPs offer that by default filters the internet into your house, that makes a parent's job a lot easier.
And Zoe, talking about these filters, how effective they are, I know you blog at Another Angry Woman.
Angry Woman, yeah.
Yeah, how would these filters affect your blog?
Well, so most mobile networks already have an automatic content blocking in place, set up for, you have to pay like £1 on your credit card to prove that you're over 18, or go into your shop with your passport saying, hey, I want to look at porn. Now, my blog is not porn. Unfortunately, I'm really sorry to say, when you go check this out, you're not going to find anything that you can get off to on there. It's largely political sort of rants. But because of the way I put it across, because of the subject matters, because I'm talking about rape and sex and a culture of consent rather than non-consent, replacing rape culture with a consent culture, because I blog about these topics, it's often blocked by the adult content filters, which already exist on mobile networks. And rather ironically, the blog I wrote the other day on this internet filtering got filtered by pretty much every mobile network.
Wow. So if you look at the porn industry, and I know you've written about this, well, just tell us, what are some of the benefits of the porn industry to greater society?
Well, some of the benefits, I guess, is technological. They're one of historically, they've been an early adopter industry, so where new technologies come along, traditional businesses generally get a little bit conservative about it. They don't take as many risks. Porn companies, porn producers have historically wanted to get their product out to the largest possible audience and as quickly as possible. So they've been jumping on all kinds of new technologies, whether it was the VCR originally or the DVDs, the internet, of course. And in doing so, they put money into those technologies that the creators of those technologies can then use to refine their products so that they can ultimately go mainstream. So things like things like YouTube, for example. Porn companies were doing online video before YouTube was. YouTube probably learned a few things. We were talking before the show about how Google's entire business model, where you do a search term and you get some ads for related things. And when you click on them, penny goes to Google from the advertiser. The porn companies were doing that well before Google was.
Keith here is tweeting in on Twitter, in general, making something illegal or blocking it does not effectively stop it. Think prohibition in the US. And Lee, there's also a Facebook comment from Samir along those same lines. He says 21st century kids are way too smart for their 20th century parents. Anonymous browsing can beat most internet filters, and anybody can download and install such tools for free, which is exactly what Peter was saying earlier. So if kids can get around it in your own home, Lee, what do you plan to do?
Primarily, it'd be supervision, so we make sure they have supervised access to the internet. Kids can get around things, and when I was at school, the way pornography was distributed was somebody would go to a shop, they'd rip out a page of a magazine, run away and hand it around the playground. It was a lot harder to get access to it. And all these filters do is they make the material a lot harder to get access to. What the problem is at the moment...
Can I jump in there?
Please.
I think that's something that's a really important point there, Lee. What these opt-in filters do is they actually send a message that you have to opt in to pornography. So it provides a space for the men and women who do not want to access pornography, who are frequently given labels like anti-sex and things like that, because it's so normalized that to be pro-sex is to access pornography. For men, there's been a lot of research done about men and about men's experience of pornography, and increasingly they're having a problematic relationship to their own pornographic consumption. We're starting to see men talking about pornography addiction. We're starting to see men talking about being unable to have fulfilling intimate relationships with other men and with other women because of their consumption of pornography. So what these filters do is they send a strong message from government, not just to young people. The discussion is so focused on young people. We want to broaden that discussion out and focus on young people, old people, all of the people, and broaden it out. And it sends a really strong message that says, yep, you can have pornography, you just need to opt into it. It starts to remove some of that shame stigma, I think, that Zoe spoke about. If there is a stigma around people's pornography use, then that in itself is something that we need to talk about. Why are people feeling ashamed about it? Is it that they have a complicated relationship to their use, and therefore is it something that we need to start having a bigger conversation about?
Do you worry at all, though, when you opt into it, you're creating a government list of people who have opted into the porn option? Or I've heard that there might be a third-party company out of China that's actually dealing with that technical process. So now this company has a list of those who have opted in.
I don't see what the problem with that is. I don't understand how the list of people that are opting into pornography could be used against people if what we're saying is there's no problem with pornography.
Remind ourselves that this isn't just about pornography, this internet filtering. This is also all sorts of political websites, and this is, even under the pornography, this is sex education and all sorts of things often find themselves on the wrong end of the content. But this is political websites that might find themselves classified as extremist material and therefore
and I think that's a
out.
separate discussion. That's not the same discussion as talking about pornography filters. So if there is other material that the government has announced that is going to be filtered, that's a discussion that needs to be had separately to the discussion looking specifically at their announcements around filtering of pornographic websites.
But Peter, on that topic, do we really trust those in power to exercise the right discretion with a national internet filter? Keith asked on Twitter.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I think in most cases where democratic countries have instituted these filters, there's been evidence that's emerged. I think I was looking at something from WikiLeaks the other day in regards to what Finland was doing when Finland had tried to do porn filtering, and it turned out that there was, some anti-government dissenters that were caught in that dragnet, which I don't know how they qualified as porn, but that, like Zoe says, it's not just about pornography. Once you have the mechanisms in place to start controlling what people can and can't see on the internet, it's very easy and very tempting for governments to get into
It's not just about pornography. So let's hold that there. We're going to take this conversation to the post show. Thanks to all our guests for joining us. Tomorrow, would you marry your first cousin? Millions of people around the world do. And we're going to take a look at the reasons behind interfamily marriage. Until then, we'll see you online. All right, welcome to the Stream's online post show. We're still talking about the UK's proposed internet filters, which would by default prevent access to online porn. Still with us are Peter Nowak, the author of the book Sex Bombs and Burgers. On Skype is Fiona Elvines, the operations coordinator at Rape Crisis South London. And our Google Plus hangout are Zoe Staffrey and Lee Porter. All right, guys, let's get back to it. Lee, does it bother you at all, the idea that there would be this list of those who have opted in?
It does, yes, but I think the list is a bit of a misnomer. Each ISP will have to have a list of who opts in just to make their systems work. There won't be a single list held by the government. If they want to get access to bits of the list, they have to do so via the proper legal processes. There won't be a single Chinese company in control of the whole network and the whole way we filter things. All these little red herrings and things that people might pop in to try and dissuade you from it. I don't think these are things to worry about at all.
It's funny you use the word red herring there, Lee. A lot of the people have been tweeting in our community saying that this entire issue is a red herring and that Cameron should be focusing on the economy and education.
I think it's really important that it focuses on issues of violence against women, actually.
Yeah, but do you have evidence that by having people opt in to watch porn that it actually would change the violence against women?
We were looking specifically at rape pornography. That's what our campaign was about, and Cameron has acted in line with the evidence that has been found around how rape pornography legitimizes and strategizes and is used by rapists as pre-offence preparation. So he has actually acted. The Conservative government, for all of their good bits and bad bits, have actually been working really hard around violence against women. So we do think it's a very important government issue, and I don't think that something like the economy or schools or something like that should be prioritised.
And
over,
Fiona, you're not the only one. On Twitter, Nuda says, pornography is largely misogynistic and it objectifies women. Much of our rape culture stems from the way porn dehumanizes women. She gets a response from Bay, who says, well said, I note it's mostly men who are complaining, but that sparked a conversation, so I want you to pick up on this one. This is from Better Off Single, is the handle on Twitter. He says, it's insulting to women to say that they can't think for themselves. Many do porn freely and are paid.
Sure. I mean, this is breaking into a broader discussion around the pornography industry. I think Peter made a very important point earlier, that pornography is an industry. So when we start talking about free speech, we need to be thinking about, what are we talking about? We're talking about actually protecting corporate speech, which isn't included under the principles of free speech. So when we start to see porn as an industry, there are a lot of problems with the porn industry. There are a lot of both women and men who have come out of the porn industry and will try and speak to anyone that will listen about the coercion and the lack of consent that constitutes much of their experience.
Zoe,
Well, I
what do you have
agree
to say
with
about
Fiona here. I will also say that there's a lot of efforts from people who are working in the sex industry to improve it. There is ethical porn out there, and there are efforts, and that this is something that we should be supporting and getting behind, rather than calling in a government who aren't really hugely on our side. Like, I have massive reservations with industry. I support any worker struggles, and this completely includes sex workers and people in porn.
I think, Zoe, as well, like, a really important thing for us to remember is I think that we're both actually coming from the same place, and I don't think it needs to be constructed as an either-or discussion. Either we have more ethical porn, or we have legislation to stop violent pornography. I think that we can have both. I think legislation works very well alongside proper policy, proper regulation, and also, like you said, people working within the sex industry to make sure that women and men are being protected with their workers' rights. I think it's both.
So I think perhaps getting away from one of the key issues is that these filters are mainly given as a tool for parents to protect their children. I think the issue of pornography, and especially teenage brains that are developing and picking all these things up, is very susceptible to the kind of hormone rushes, the endorphin rush you have when you're using pornography. And I think the problem is that can seriously affect the way children grow up viewing sex and sexual relationships. I'm a Christian guy. I believe that God made us relational beings. And when you have pornography and you see these modes of sex on images and on videos, it removes the relational aspect from the sexual act and makes it a tool, a kind of mechanism to get a bit of a high.
Well,
Yeah, and we found
Lee,
in our
you
work
mentioned
in schools with
religion,
young
and
people,
I think that
definitely to mirror that.
I want to jump in here
something
because
that we
Lee
were saying.
mentioned religion, and that kind of echoes really well with what our community is saying about now, is this a moral issue? Daniel says, good to see some moral leadership from government for a change. But Peter, it's the fact that it's now become a moral issue that our video commenter, Emma, has a problem with. Have a listen to this.
There's a concern about the fact that we're moving away from a legal towards a moral judgment in terms of what we can see online. And we're going to have to make a decision about who's going to make that moral judgment as to what kind of content. We already know that it's not just going to be pornographic sites that are going to be included in the default block. It's going to be anorexia, extremist content, and things like that. So who gets to decide what other things are going to be added to that default block?
Yeah, I would actually bring it back to the page 3 girl photo that you showed at the beginning of the show, which if that image is not meant to excite men or to titillate men, I don't really know what it's for. I mean, do we consider it pornographic? I don't, I guess, but probably some people would. So there is that moral judgment, which is, it comes back to full circle to what we were talking about at the beginning, which is who makes the decisions as to what is pornographic and what isn't.
Should point out that the owner of the newspaper, which has page 3 in it, is quite close with the Prime Minister, which might explain why this isn't being blocked under the content blocks.
Should actually, Fiona, should this page 3 photo be blocked with the new porn filter?
It 100%. The UK needs to get rid of page 3. It is an abomination. I do not understand how we're living in 2013 and there is still in one of the biggest kind of nations in the world, in one of their biggest selling papers, there are pictures of naked breasts as soon as you open the page. It's absolutely ridiculous. If there was a way that this porn block would somehow include that, I would be 100% behind it.
Would it bother you if it included the entire paper?
The entire paper.
Yeah, right with you.
So, yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. It's not just page 3. Throughout the Daily Mail, throughout a lot of the press in England, there's upskirt shots, there's lots of softcore pornography. All of this stuff is adding to a culture that supports violence against women, that eroticizes women's non-consent. All of these things are added together. We need to tackle all of them. The fact that the government is making moves, particularly around rape pornography, to tackle one thing is good. It needs to happen not in isolation.
Well, I think it's important as well to know that it isn't just that kind of pornography that's a problem. There's also a lot of homosexual porn on the internet as well, and men as well as women are being objectified in this kind of sexual way. So it isn't just women that are being objectified on the internet and perhaps abused or in the kind of job they maybe rather not be into. It's men as well who are being subject to this kind of stuff.
I mean, I do need to say, in the content analysis that we did of the top 50 rape pornography sites, 100% of the victims were women. So it was specifically around eroticizing the non-consent of women and the rape of women. But I do gather that that's not going to be entirely representative of what's on the internet as a whole.
You know, I don't know what site you looked at, but I recently read a book called A Billion Wicked Thoughts, and it was just kind of analyzing Google searches from around the world. And it said one of the leading gay searches was about forcing straight men to go gay.
Wow.
Was that one of the 50 that you analyzed?
No, I mean, what we did was we conducted a content analysis. We typed in free rape porn into Google and we went through the top 50 sites that came, and we did content analysis of what the videos contained, where the violence was being used, the race, the ethnicity of the perpetrators and the victims. I mean, that's something that hasn't come into discussion. This is also a form of racialized hate speech. I would say there are lots of very racist stereotypes that we found within rape pornography. So it's not just sexist, it's also racist. There's also a really big focus on teens. So there's actually a really big focus on the non-consent and control and rape of teenage girls. So when we start to look at the big broader context of the content of rape pornography, I think we start to uncover a lot of things that are very, very scary. So that's particularly what we looked at, but I do understand.
Look, Fiona, I've got to stop you here on the show because we're out of time. We can continue this conversation, include us in it by including hashtag AJStream, and we can continue this on Twitter. On our next show, would you marry your first cousin? Millions around the world do. We're going to take a look at the reasons behind interfamily marriage and why some are questioning this very old tradition. And until then, well, we'll see you online.